Hey folks, welcome to our next stop along the tour. I'm standing here in front of the Brazilian fields. And so these fields are a really interesting part of the park's history that a lot of people don't really think about. So Centennial Park, whilst mainly used for places of recreation and leisure, are also used for a large amount of sporting fields. Maybe some of you have actually played a game or two on some of these fields here. Further behind me, you might be able to see some of the lights in the distance of the Sydney cricket ground over there. And between the sporting fields and the cricket ground, this hints at a really interesting phase in the park's history, which are kind of typified by the threats to the park. So Moore Park was seen as a very well-established sporting and recreation part of the broader park precinct between Queen's Park, Centennial Park and Moore Park. The success of places like Moore Park and the cricket grounds saw the government think that they could try and make more money out of the park by selling off large parts of Centennial Park for development. So this was mainly development that was proposed around the 50s to increase the amount of sporting precincts in the area. Those sporting precincts would have carved the park's size by about, they would have taken a third off the park itself. So a huge part of the area around us here that's been kind of set aside for public use was planned to be developed into a huge Homebush Bay style, Moore Park style sporting precinct. Now, what ended up happening was that local community areas around here, Wallara, Paddington and Randwick, they got together with what was happening at the time around the 60s, around 1964 or so, the Greens Bands movements which were taking place around Sydney. This was a tools down kind of unionist movement which saw the saving or the conservation of huge parts of Sydney. So places like the Rocks, for example, were a key part of the Green Band's union movement, where they put tools down against demolition and they would not be doing any work to do any more renovations or kind of progress in these parts of Sydney. Centennial Park was one part of that Green Bands movement which can't be ignored. In 1972, together with a whole range of different actors, including, I've got their names, Patrick White, Neville Wran, who went on to be the Premier, and Jack Mundy, who was a key unionist member in New South Wales. They all got together with local community groups, and in 1972, the Green Bands was asserted for Centennial Park, and there was no more development that would happen in the area here. So this is a really, really important part of Centennial Park's history. Probably the biggest threat in the 20th century to the park was that sporting kind of precinct development. And together with local community groups, the Green Bands movement in Sydney put a stop to that development. And what ends up happening is we can see that we have the ability to have places like the Brazilian fields for sporting areas. One of the other things that the park has been used more and more of is a way to actually still generate money. So it's it's part of the public government system here, the Centennial Park. And that means that it depends on public monies for funding, for infrastructures, for maintenance, etc. But a way to increase that funding is through hosting events. So having things like music festivals, the Moonlight Cinema, for example, that all is great revenue for the park in order to try and boost their income throughout the year. But that also comes at a compromise because at a part of these events means that they're, yes, getting money for maintenance, but they are also completely trashed. If you've been to a music festival here, you'll know how absolutely trashed the fields get at the end of the day. Those music festivals end up having to pay for rehabilitation of those sites as well. So massive amounts of soil and turf get relayed after these events. Filming as well takes place in the park. With closeness to Fox Studios, it's a really handy place for film studios to do filming throughout the year as well. So this is kind of a commentary around how the threats to Centennial Park during the late 20th century kind of linger on into today, where more and more commercial activities are taking place in the park at kind of a potential threat to the public use of the park in itself. So we'll be heading over to our next and final stop in the tour after this, but this is just a small little kind of thought. When you walk past an empty sport field like this, it's come at a cost. Thanks.